So I ran into an old friend years ago at a coffee shop, and we had gone to youth group together. And so we were spending time reminiscing about the days we were in youth group and also just catching up and talking about where our lives had led us to this point. And he had told me that he had spent the last 10, 15 years looking for truth, convinced that he could never find it within the church. And my life kind of took the opposite trajectory in that I've been spending all my time trying to convince people that the truth can be found in Jesus Christ. So I asked him what led him to believe that the church was useless in his search for truth, for love, for life, and for wholeness. So he told me that when he was 16, his father was sick, and he went to see the pastor of the church that he was attending, and he asked the pastor, if my father dies, would he go to hell because my father's never been to church? And the pastor looked at him and said, there's not much wiggle room here. There's not much I can do or say, but the Bible is absolutely clear. If your father doesn't believe before he dies, yes, he will be in hell. And my friend said that once he heard that phrase come out of his pastor's mouth, he knew at that moment, then and there, that he was done with the church for the rest of his life. And he continued and said, it's not like my father was an evil man. My father wasn't a bad man. He was a good man. He was very compassionate. He was very empathetic. He was very generous. He was very loving. He was a good father. He was simply just a good man. I just couldn't deal with the idea that this good man that I loved so deeply was going to hell based upon what I felt like was the technicality. So I couldn't handle that, especially when I was 16. And what bothered me even more was just how sure the pastor was. He was so certain. He was absolutely convinced that this was the fate of my father. It was so black and white. And this black and white world did not include my father, and therefore it would not include me. And so I was done. That was it. I never went back to church after that day. And so then he took a little pause to take a sip of his coffee, and I could see the resentment in him. And not only that, I could feel the resentment emanate from him, even after all these years. And he said, I don't know what I expected to hear from the pastor. Maybe it was empathy. Maybe it was sympathy. Maybe it was an acknowledgement of my struggle. Maybe I wanted to hear him say, I don't know, but I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to work this out with you. Let's talk about this together. Just something to help me get a better grasp about this God that I've been hearing about for the past 10 years of my life. Something to help me deal with what's going to happen to my dad after he dies, if there was going to be anything that happens to my dad after he dies. But all I got was, if he doesn't follow the rules, he's going to hell. And I could sort of relate to what he experienced because I also was thrown bumper sticker theology cliches at me when I was questioning about my faith. Just believe more, pray more, have more faith. And I've always wondered what that looks like. Like, do I just close my eyes and is that what have more faith looks like? And I also resented all my spiritual leaders who made everything black and white. It's either this or it's either that. And there's no in between. There's no wiggle room. And everything was, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Just look it up. It's in the Bible. And if it's not in the Bible, it's because you're not believing hard enough. You just need to pray harder and have more faith and just believe. Just once when I was a teenager, I wanted someone to say to me, that's a very good question. I don't know, but let's work it out together. Maybe looking back, maybe during my teenage years, I needed things to be black and white. Maybe pastors are uncomfortable with the unknown, which is really a strange thing to say if you think about it. Maybe many of us are afraid to say, I don't know, because we're supposed to be the resident theologian. We're supposed to know all things about God because we are the connection between the layman and God. So if we say, I don't know, maybe we feel like we're not doing an adequate job. And maybe it's because people expect answers from us. After all, that's what they're paying us for, right? Frederick Buechner wrote, he has to give answers because everybody else is giving answers. Maybe we just don't want to be caught looking dumb. So we feel the need to have answers for everything. And sometimes we're given a script of answers, almost like as if we're a telemarketer trying to sell a 2-week cruise. And I feel that that's more damaging than helping. And in our quest to find answers, we often make doubt the enemy of faith. We're led to believe if you doubt, you're not a good Christian. You shouldn't doubt. Good and faithful people don't doubt. I remember expressing doubt and certain questions about the Bible and about God in one of the youth groups that I grew up in. And the youth pastor chastised me, saying, you shouldn't have these questions, saying if you had more faith, you wouldn't be asking these kind of questions. If you were a good Christian, all these doubts and all these questions would simply disappear. So you need to pray more, you need to believe more, and you need to have more faith. Just pray to God to give you more faith and everything will be okay. Does that ever work out for anyone? Or am I just a stupid one? It wasn't until I was long done with seminary, like late into my 20s, when I started to understand that doubt isn't the enemy of faith. That doubt isn't the opposite of faith. Sometimes doubt leads to greater faith. Thomas doubted. The 12 disciples doubted. One would even argue that Jesus doubted in the Garden of Gethsemane. Doubt is not the enemy of faith. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. If there is an enemy of faith, it would be fear. And it's our fear that leads us to obsess over finding answers, over providing nice little neat answers that put everything in a nice little neat pretty box. It's like we believe that the more questions we can answer, the more spiritually mature we become. And somewhere in our quest for seeking answers, we've lost the art of asking questions, and we've lost the art of asking the right questions. The rabbis of Jesus' day gauged how well someone knew the scriptures, not by the answers that they gave, but by the questions that they asked. And if they kept asking the right questions, the rabbis knew that this disciple was on the right path. Often asking the right questions isn't going to offend God, isn't going to scare God away. It might actually deepen our faith, because God is bigger than all our questions and all our doubts. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. You can still be doubtful and still be a faithful servant of God. In fact, if we had all the answers to all the questions, what's the point of faith? Faith is holding on to things that we don't know. And God is supposed to be a mystery to us humans. We're not supposed to have God all figured out, or God wouldn't be God. We're so desperate to put God in a little box to make God understandable to us. But that's not who God is. That is not the essence of God. God is supposed to remain mysterious to us. So let's live in that mystery. And it's okay to not understand everything about God. It's okay to not understand everything about the Bible. It's okay to wonder why all this stuff happens when we are supposed to believe in a good and faithful, loving God. Those kind of questions are not the enemies of faith. It's people who tries to silence your questions. It's the people who are afraid to wrestle, afraid to struggle, afraid to question. Fear is the opposite of faith. So my friends, keep struggling, keep wrestling, keep asking questions, and be okay admitting that you don't have all the answers. Sometimes the best thing is not an answer to a question, but a companion on a journey. Thank you so much, my friends, for taking this time to join me on this video. I hope that you are staying well and that you are staying healthy.
Hello, everyone. I love you.
Can you say something besides I love you?
I'm watching my iPad. Please subscribe. Love you. Bye. I did it.